In the last and bloodiest years of World War II, when cities burned and empires crumbled, a new sound rolled across the Eastern Front. A deep metallic growl that struck fear into every German tanker. It was the sound of the IS-2. The Soviets called it Iosif Stalin, after the man who demanded that victory be built from steel. It was not just another tank, it was revenge on tracks. And so, in the freezing factories of Chelyabinsk, under dim lights and endless pressure, a new machine began to take shape. Men worked through the night, sparks lighting their faces as steel giants were born from fire. The IS-2 was more than steel and bolts. It was the roar of a nation that refused to fall silent. By 1944, the Red Army was advancing westward, and the IS-2 led the charge. In every offensive, these heavy tanks spearheaded the assault, through mud, smoke, and endless artillery fire. Villages that had been reduced to ash became battlegrounds once more, and wherever the IS-2 rolled, German defenses broke like glass. Its 122mm gun was not just a weapon, it was a statement. When it fired, entire fortifications vanished. German soldiers spoke of its echo as if it were the voice of the earth itself. Commanders soon realized that the IS-2 could do more than destroy tanks, it could crush morale. Entire lines would retreat after hearing its thunder in the distance. But the tank was not invincible. The front was chaos. Crews faced constant danger. Mines, aircraft, and ambushes. Inside, the heat and smoke were suffocating. Shell casings piled up at their feet, oil mixed with sweat, and the air vibrated with each recoil. Still, they pressed forward. When the Red Army entered Poland, the IS-2 became the spearhead of liberation. In Warsaw, it battled street by street, blasting open paths for infantry. Its massive gun tore through enemy barricades like paper. And as cities burned around them, the crews never forgot what they were fighting for. The promise of home, the memory of those left behind in the East. By early 1945, the IS-2 was everywhere, from the snowy plains of Hungary to the forests of East Prussia. The Germans called them steel beasts. They learned to recognize the sound of its V2 diesel engine, deep, rhythmic, like a giant's heartbeat. One German commander wrote, "When we heard that sound, we knew we had hours left to live." As the Red Army surrounded Berlin, IS-2 units were given the most dangerous task, leading the assault into the capital itself. The city was a maze of rubble, fire, and desperation. Tanks moved like ghosts between crumbling buildings, their guns pounding from point-blank range. Every street was a trap. German Panzerfaust teams hid in basements and windows, waiting for a shot at the Soviet giants. Many IS-2s were lost that way, burning from within, their crews dying inside metal coffins. But for every tank destroyed, another took its place. The IS-2s didn't stop. They smashed through walls, bridges, and barricades, grinding the Nazi capital beneath their treads. One veteran recalled, "You couldn't hear your own voice inside the tank. It was all thunder, smoke, and chaos. But every time we fired, the ground itself seemed to scream." At the Reichstag, IS-2s stood like iron statues, guarding the ruins as Soviet troops raised the red banner above the city. That moment marked not only victory, it marked the triumph of endurance. When the guns finally fell silent, the IS-2s were still there, their turrets blackened, their armor scarred. They had survived the greatest war the world had ever seen. But their story didn't end with peace. The design of the IS-2 inspired a new generation of tanks, the IS-3, IS-4, and eventually the T-10. Each inherited its spirit, thick armor, devastating firepower, and a presence that demanded respect. But even as technology evolved, the IS-2 remained in service in Korea, in China, even in the Middle East. It fought in dozens of post-war conflicts, decades after the victory that created it. Its shape became a global symbol of power, the long gun barrel, the sloped armor, the unmistakable roar of its engine. It was not elegant, it was not modern, but it was eternal. Inside the Soviet Union, the IS-2 also became a monument. In countless cities, its hulking frame was placed on pedestals, painted green, adorned with flowers every May 9th. Veterans brought their children to see it, to tell them, "This tank ended the war." For many, it was more than machinery, it was the memory of youth, of fire, of survival. The men who drove the IS-2 rarely spoke of glory. They remembered exhaustion, fear, and loss. But when asked what they trusted most in battle, they always answered the same: our tank. The technical side of the IS-2 was a marvel of wartime engineering. Its armor reached up to 160 millimeters thick at the front, angled to deflect enemy shells. Its gun, the D-25T, could fire both high-explosive and armor-piercing rounds. At close range, it could destroy any tank the Germans had, even the feared Tiger II. But it came with a price. The massive shells took 2 men to load, slowing its rate of fire. Its interior was cramped, visibility poor. Yet the Soviet crews adapted. They learned to move, to fight, to survive. Their tactics evolved. IS-2 units no longer fought alone. They advanced with infantry and lighter tanks, using teamwork instead of brute force. This doctrine became the foundation of Soviet armored warfare for decades. In the post-war years, as the Cold War began, the IS-2 stood as a reminder, both to allies and enemies, of what Soviet industry could achieve under pressure. Western observers called it a masterpiece of brutal simplicity. Many of the tanks were modernized into the IS-2M version. New engines, night vision devices, better communications, extra fuel tanks. Some served into the 1970s, nearly 30 years after their first battle. Even as new models like the T-54 and T-55 appeared, the IS-2 remained a veteran among them, slower, louder, but carrying an aura that no modern tank could replace. Decades later, when the Soviet Union dissolved, the IS-2s were still there, in museums, parks, and military bases. Some were rusting quietly under the rain, others restored to perfection, their paint shining under the sun. And yet, whenever a mechanic started the old diesel engine, that same sound, that deep metallic growl, filled the air again. It was like awakening a sleeping beast. The sound carried history: Stalingrad, Kursk, Berlin. It carried the voices of those who never came back. Today, the IS-2 stands not only as a relic, but as a teacher. It tells us what determination can build when everything else is gone. It reminds us that victory is never easy. It's forged in sweat, pain, and sacrifice. For those who survived inside it, the IS-2 was both home and prison. A place where they faced death every day, and yet found life again when the guns went silent. They say machines don't have souls, but the IS-2 proves otherwise, because every dent, every scar, every mark on its armor tells a story written in fire. When you stand before one today, you can almost feel the heartbeat of the crew, the vibration of the engine, the echo of the war. It's more than a monument. It's memory made of metal. In the end, the IS-2's legacy is not about destruction. It's about endurance, about the will to rise again when the world collapses around you. From the ashes of burned cities, from the ruins of despair, came this machine, cold, unyielding, and magnificent. It wasn't built to be perfect. It was built to survive. And that's why, even now, when the last veterans are gone, the IS-2 still speaks. Not in words, but in silence. A silence filled with power, with history, with truth. The IS-2, the Soviet giant, forged in fear, born in fire, and remembered forever, because legends don't fade. They rumble on somewhere in the distance,